Hi everyone, welcome to Data Science Congress 2020. My name is Phani Mitra. I head Analytics and Transformation Initiatives at Dr. Reddy's. Today I'm very happy to speak to all of you. Even though it's a virtual conference, I congratulate the organizers for managing this show and the learning for all of you. In the past, I have had an opportunity to lead and work with some brilliant data scientists. And in the due course of my career, I also had an opportunity to work on a lot of business strategy as well as transformation initiatives. With that experience, I today wanted to talk to you about how you can make your data science initiatives be accepted in the organization as well as make them successful. I'm sure you must have heard a lot of speakers talk about the latest advances in the technology as well as the models. And a lot of tools that are now available with the data scientist. But one thing I find always intriguing when it comes to setting up data science teams or analytics teams and integrating them very closely into the overall organization's business strategy is there are a few pitfalls that are like blind spots for some of our teams. So I just wanted to share a simple framework to check how you're doing, how your own data science initiatives are doing in your organization, and use this framework to maybe fix a few things and make them successful. So I dive right in and talk to you about, I don't have to tell you that there are a lot of cool things happening in the data science world right now, and courtesy COVID, the business teams have now realized that digital go-to-markets are no longer and a nice to have. This is part of the business. This is how the business is going to be run into the future. A lot of business teams have already realized that, and of course analytics and data science would play a very, very important role in that transformation. But when I look at some of the headlines on Harvard Business Review, it kind of tells us a little bit that for the business leaders, for the CEOs, CXOs, data science is still a bit of an enigma. They don't really understand it, and that's where some of these publications are actually trying to tell them who are these people, who are data scientists, and how do we create communication channels between the business teams and the data science teams. And I love the way McKinsey summarized it with this one quote asking if you are the brilliant data scientist that nobody listens to in the organization. If you feel like that, trust me, you're not alone. A lot of people in the data science world believe so, and I wanted to throw a little bit of light on how to overcome this challenge. So if you look at the overall framework, I've broadly broken that into A, B, C, D. A for audience, who are the people you're talking to. B for the business impact that you are looking at. Context for C, and of course the most important one is data. So let's start with something that all of us very clearly understand: data. If you look at data science initiatives, and even after calling it the sexiest job in the world, most of the data scientists are frustrated because when they start trying to get their hands on this a problem of interest, they suddenly realize that data is the biggest bottleneck. And so as leaders who would drive data science initiatives, as analytics leaders, sometimes it falls on us to make sure that the organization has a very, very clear data strategy. It is probably as important, if not more important, than the overall analytics strategy and the roadmaps, right? So if you look at data, it's not that it doesn't exist. It's a myth that data doesn't exist. There is lots and lots of data in the organization, broadly in these three buckets. The first one is what I call the owned data. This is data that is existing in the organization. All it takes is the commitment and the initiatives to actually bring this together. So this exists inside every organization. I think it's more about having the right data strategy to make this data accessible and available. Yeah. The second one, I see this as a goldmine of data, but sometimes very less understood. A very simple example is every business, every organization does work with a lot of partners, be it upstream with the suppliers, or downstream partners like stockists, distributors, retail partners, and so on, right? While there are a lot of contracts negotiations that go on into how these partnerships would work, one thing that gets missed out of this entire conversation is, can I get more data? Even if I have to pay for it. And that conversation, I have never seen the business teams actually make it. The business teams never ask for this data, and it is for us to actually sensitize them to this very critical asset. The last one is probably the most interesting one. A lot of people actually write web scrapers, Python codes, to do this, to go around, get external data from blog sites, public websites, and so on. I broadly call it the haystack. If you know, even if you know your needle, even if you know what you're looking for, this is probably the most difficult place to actually put it all together, unless you are incredibly intelligent or lucky. That's my personal experience with this data. But that said, it's a very, very important asset, because this enriches the way things get analyzed, because it's always good to have the outside in perspective. So in summary, it's very, very important to have the data strategy in place and ensure that the head of business understands that data is a very, very critical asset that he should be looking out for in all his business transactions. Yeah. So this is one. The second one is the context. And this is something that I find missing in a lot of data science teams. Sometimes they don't fully understand or grasp where and how the analytics would get used. This has a strong correlation with the elements of design thinking, elements of understanding how the user would use it, who is the user who's going to use it, and things like that, right? So that context, if you were to look at it in three different buckets, the first context is analytics use cases that we build for strategy, planning, and business design decisions. How do I deploy my field force? What kind of pricing strategy or manufacturing location strategy would I take, and things like that. The second bucket is broadly the business execution decisions. This is about everyday decisions that get made by the middle managers, by the leaders in the organization in the due course of their business. It can be operational leaders making decisions around manufacturing processes. It can be sales or commercial leaders making decisions about pricing on a particular deal and things like that. The last one is what I broadly call, and the most interesting one is what I call the on-field or moments of truth decisions, and the analytics that actually enable that to happen. This can be a last-minute recommendation, last-minute discount coupon on an e-commerce website, a recommendation engine that is given to the sales rep who is going to visit the retail outlets. In our case, for example, what do we tell the medical rep just before he enters the doctor's cabin? What is most important? How do you make that conversation? So these are the three broad buckets in which the analytics initiatives get deployed. It's very, very important for the teams to understand the context, and if there is reasonable coverage of analytics use cases across these three contexts. And another key thing is this also helps you kind of figure out how much of our models, our analytics engines, have to be explainable versus simple. Obviously, if you're telling something to a field rep standing in front of a retailer, we better focus on making it really, really simple. But if you're obviously pitching to your CEO, telling the business heads about manufacturing strategy or supply chain strategy and things like that, it needs to be explainable in terms of why you have come to that kind of conclusion, right? So that's the thing around context. Jump to the next one. This is the most critical one, because however great our ideas are, I think this is going to be critical to have the right funding for these ideas, and to have some of these initiatives funded. It is very, very important to show to the business teams that these can create impact. A lot of teams I see are doing a good job of this these days, but this still remains the biggest challenge in terms of having a clear communication between the business strategy teams and the data or data science and analytics teams. And obviously, we know this Venn diagram very, very well. There are things, there are ideas that are very cool, and there are ideas that have impact. But I believe there is a sweet spot in between where our ideas can lie. And from a business strategy perspective, I kind of look at each of the ideas to say if they do one of these three things. And and hence can be integrated into the business strategy. Number one, does it make the organization better than the competition in some way? The second one is, does it actually convert into dollars on your P&L? Because that actually means that the business would be really excited about this. The third one is obviously about about these ideas that actually make the customers love the company, because it provides that nice little something that makes the customer stick to our platform, stick to our organization, and choose us over competition as well, right? So that's the thing that we need to check. And here these are the two very, very important questions. If the organization's strategy document does not talk about analytics or data science, then that's a red flag. That means you are probably not as important to the business as you think you are. The second one is about the data science projects calling out the business impact very clearly. This is again a red flag, but it is from our side this time, right? This is about you not understanding, what is of value and what kind of value does the initiative create for the business. So both of these are extremely important, and these are very, very critical for the two-way communication to happen. But not least, this is something that can make or break any initiative, irrespective of whether it is a analytics initiative or not. That is audience, people make or break things, and data science initiatives are no different. The first one to look at is this push-pull a force field that we see in every organization between sponsorship and user love or user experience, right? So there are data science teams that users love, but the leaders don't get pretty excited about it. There is no real sponsorship there, or vice versa. I think it's very, very important to balance these two boxes very, very clearly. At the same time, it's also important to avoid, as Safi calls it in loon shots, the Moses trap, because I have seen a lot of data science teams set up very, very closely to the top management. It's in the chairman's office, it's in the head of strategy's office, and so on. And so it's placed pretty high in the organizational hierarchy. So there is no dearth of sponsorship, but obviously the pull does not exist, because the users or the real business folks don't really understand what this team is supposed to do and how it will help them, right? So it is very, very important to balance these two. And when it comes to checking for where you fall in that love-hate bucket, I have a simple framework that I've learned from a HR leader once. Is about on x-axis having people liking you or not liking you as an individual, as a team, and on the y-axis is liking what you do or not liking what you do. So it's a very simple framework. Think about it, and it suddenly falls in place for us. If there are a lot of organizations where the teams might not like the data science team, but they really think they are doing some good work, right? And that is a place where it is very, very imperative that we build trust with the teams, change manage it properly, and it's a more a people transformation kind of problem. The other side is where people actually like you. They kind of think you're doing you're doing well, but they don't really understand or like what you do. And that is a place where it requires intervention. It requires intervention in terms of business impact calculations as well as capability or building in the business teams. Yeah. So people, audience plays a very, very important role. I think we have to manage both the sponsors as well as the business users who actually take the solutions and actually run with it. That's the broad summary of what I have, ABCD. If you want to make any of the initiatives successful, check for these 4 things. Make sure that you have checked all the boxes here. Of course, this is not comprehensive, but I believe it gives a decent framework, for you to check what is making your initiative, your team, successful in your organization or not. Yeah. Of course, nothing beats this, that whatever you do has a far greater impact than what you say. So execution is everything. So pick the best model, pick the right data sets, make sure your error metrics are right. This can never be replaced or substituted, because this is what you got the seat at the table for. So do this really well. This is and keep the framework in mind, and please do reach out to me if you have any questions or suggestions on how we can do this better. So there, wishing you very best in whatever you do. Happy virtual Data Science Congress. Have a good one. Bye-bye.